You're 71. Your house is quiet now, too quiet. You sit at the kitchen table, holding a cup of tea. But you're not really drinking. You're thinking. And suddenly, without planning to, you whisper a prayer. Not loud, not poetic. Just a soft, simple line you've said 1,000 times before. But this time, it feels different, because this time, it's the only thing holding you together. This is not a sermon. It's not about being religious or going to church every Sunday. It's about something deeper. What keeps us standing when life brings us to our knees? If you're over 60, you've likely faced losses that others can't imagine. Spouses, health, friends, maybe even the version of yourself you used to know. And in those moments, faith, not as a word, but as an experience, can be the last thing left. A quiet room, a folded hand, a whisper to something greater. In this video, we'll talk about the role of prayer and belief in the hardest seasons of aging. Not to preach, but to share the honest, tender ways faith becomes more real after 60, especially when nothing else seems to work. Folded hands, block 1. The first time I truly prayed. Joe is 67. When his wife passed away, he didn't cry at the funeral. He didn't talk about it. He just kept mowing the lawn, making coffee, folding laundry. But every night, he sat on the edge of the bed, looked up, and said, "I don't know what to do." That was his prayer. Not elegant, not long, but it was real. This is what most people don't understand about prayer, especially after 60. It's not always about religion. It's not about perfection. It's not even about answers. It's about presence. It's about showing up to something bigger, even when you feel smaller than ever. Joe never considered himself spiritual, but in those quiet moments, prayer wasn't something he did. It was what kept him from falling apart. Prayer gives you a place to pour out grief without judgment. Speak words no one else would understand. Feel less alone, even when no one's there. Remember you're still here, still breathing, still held. And for many seniors, that's not just helpful, it's essential. Yellow circle what you can do. If you're carrying a weight that feels too heavy to explain, find a quiet spot, no distractions. Speak honestly, even if it's just one sentence. You don't have to believe perfectly to be heard. Say it out loud, or whisper it, or just think it. Sometimes, prayer isn't about changing the situation, it's about surviving it. Sparkle's deeper truth. Joe said it best. "I didn't believe prayer would fix anything. I just knew it was the only thing I had left." And maybe that's when it starts to mean the most. How faith helps you process loss when words aren't enough. Carol is 74. She lost her sister last winter. They used to talk every day about nothing and everything. Now, silence. Not the peaceful kind. The heavy kind. The kind that rings in your ears like an ache you can't touch. After the funeral, Carol kept telling herself, "Be strong. Keep going." But her days felt like they had no floor beneath them. Even when surrounded by people, she felt alone. That's when she started praying again. Not for a miracle, not to bring her sister back, just to survive the grief. She sat on her bed one night, opened an old prayer book from when she was a teenager, and whispered, "Lord, I miss her. That's all." That was enough. Speech balloon, the pain that has no words. There are moments in life, especially after 60, when the pain is beyond language. Losing a partner, saying goodbye to a child, living through another friend's funeral. People will say, "Time heals. Stay positive. Keep busy." But what if your heart isn't ready to move on? That's where faith steps in. Not to fix the grief, but to hold it. Prayer becomes a way to grieve out loud, even when you can't find the right words. Candle prayer as a container for grief. In spiritual tradition, whether you're religious or not, Prayer has always been a container, a place to drop your anger without shame, cry without judgment, be silent without needing to explain. Faith gives grief a form, not so it goes away, but so it doesn't swallow you. Carol says she still misses her sister every day, but now she speaks to her in prayer, tells her about the garden, the weather, the ache. And in doing that, she found something else. She was still alive, still connected, still loved. Even in the loss, yellow circle what you can do. If you're grieving someone, light a candle before you speak. Write a letter to them and read it aloud. Say their name, in prayer, in silence, in memory. Believe that it still matters. Because love doesn't vanish. Grief is not something to rush. It's something to bring into the light. Gently, daily, honestly. Sparkles deeper truth. Faith doesn't erase the loss. It gives it shape, so that when you carry it, you know you're not carrying it alone. Why many seniors return to prayer after decades away. Mark is 78. He hadn't prayed in 35 years, not since his wife got sick the first time. Not since the prayers didn't work. He stopped going to church, stopped folding his hands. He told himself, if God was real, he would have done something. But something strange happened when he turned 75. He was alone more often. His body moved slower, and the questions he buried for decades came back. What happens when I die? Was all this worth it? Is there still time to make peace with myself? And one morning, without a plan, Mark whispered, "Are you still there?" That was his first prayer in decades. Repeat button, returning, not repeating. For many seniors, faith isn't a straight line. Maybe you grew up in church. Maybe you believed when you were young. Then life got complicated. Maybe religion felt like rules, pressure, guilt. So you left. And for a while, that made sense. But later in life, something shifts. You're not praying because you should. You're praying because you need to, not to earn approval, not to get something, but because deep inside, there's a whisper that wants to return. Mark didn't go back to being religious. He didn't memorize new verses. He just sat in the same chair every morning, looked out the window, and said whatever was on his heart. Sometimes it was, "Thank you." Sometimes, "I'm scared." And sometimes, just silence. That was enough. Dove the faith that grows in stillness. After 60, many things fall away. Schedules, noise, careers. And in that stillness, something unexpected can rise. Not blind belief, but something deeper. Openness. A sense that you're part of something, even if you can't name it. Prayer becomes not performance, but presence. Not certainty, but surrender. Not answers, but companionship. You may not feel religious, but if you've ever whispered to the sky or cried in a quiet room, you've prayed. Yellow circle, what you can do. If you feel distant from faith, but curious, don't try to go back. Just begin from where you are. Speak honestly. No filter, no pressure. Create a sacred moment. Light, breath, stillness. Even for 2 minutes. And trust that you're not starting over. You're simply coming home in your own way, in your own time. Sparkles, deeper truth. You don't have to believe the way you once did. You don't need a perfect faith. You just need a moment of honesty. And in that moment, you might feel something ancient and tender answering back. Pause for a moment. Have you ever sat in silence with too much to say and no words to say it? Have you ever felt too tired to ask, too angry to hope, too hurt to speak. If you have, you're not alone. That silence, that stillness, it is a kind of prayer. And sometimes, it's the most honest one of all. What to pray when you don't know what to say. Maria is 82. Her hands are weak now. She struggles to open jars, fold sheets, tie laces. But there's one thing she still does every day. She lights a candle, and she sits and says nothing. For 10 minutes, sometimes longer. No words, no requests, just breath, just presence. Maria used to pray with lists, for her husband's heart condition, for her children's safety. Now they're grown. Her husband is gone. And her prayer? It changed. It became a place to be, not a place to fix. She says, "Some days I just sit there and cry," and I believe that counts. Dove, when prayer is wordless. There's a myth that prayer must be structured, that it needs the right phrases, the right posture, the right theology. But real prayer, the kind that saves you from despair, doesn't need polish. It can be a sigh, a tear, a question with no answer, a whisper, "Help me," or just breath. Especially after 60. When the losses start stacking up and the future feels uncertain, you don't always have the energy to form a perfect sentence. And that's okay, because prayer isn't about being eloquent. It's about being present. It's about showing up, even empty. Maria's candle doesn't bring back her husband. It doesn't stop time, but it reminds her, I'm not alone. I'm still here. And something holy is with me in this moment. Yellow circle what you can do. If words escape you, try this. Sit with a photo of someone you love. Light a candle or play soft instrumental music. Breathe slowly. Put your hand over your heart. Think of one phrase. I'm here. Thank you. Help. I miss you. Repeat it like a heartbeat. Let it carry you. Your prayer doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real. Sparkles deeper truth. Some prayers are whispered, some are shouted, and some are just tears sliding down your face while you sit in the dark. They're all heard. They all matter, especially the ones you thought didn't count. How faith changes the way we face death. George is 83. He has cancer. The doctors say it's slow moving, but still moving. He doesn't cry much. Doesn't talk about it in dramatic ways. But every night, before bed, he sits by the window and says the same 3 words. I trust you. He doesn't know what's coming, but he knows he's not going through it alone. And that changes everything. Dove, death without faith versus death with it. One of the hardest realities after 60 is realizing you're closer to the end than the beginning. It's not morbid, it's math. But how you face that truth makes all the difference. For some, the thought of dying brings panic, regret, isolation, a sense of helplessness. But for others, especially those who've made peace through faith, there's something else. Calm, readiness, even gratitude. Faith doesn't erase the fear of death, but it gives it context. It reminds you that this life is part of a greater story, that you're not fading, you're crossing, that love continues in memory, in legacy, in eternity, and maybe most powerfully, it helps you feel at peace, even when there's no control left. George says he used to be terrified of dying, but now he sees each day as a gift. each sunrise as a final blessing, each prayer as a soft step toward release. He's not giving up. He's letting go with dignity. Yellow circle what you can do. If thoughts of death trouble you, don't suppress them. Bring them into the light. Talk to someone you trust, or whisper your fear in prayer. Ask for peace, not certainty. Read a passage, a poem, or scripture that brings calm. Say aloud, "I don't know what comes next, but I won't face it alone." That sentence can become a pillow to rest your soul on. Sparkle's deeper truth. Death doesn't ask if you're ready, but faith lets you become ready anyway, and when that time comes, your final breath might not be a cry of fear, but a whisper of return. There's something sacred that happens with age. You stop pretending. You stop rushing. You start noticing things no one else does, like the way morning light touches the kitchen floor, or how a simple prayer, whispered between sighs, can hold your whole day together. Prayer isn't always religion. For many of us, it's a refuge, a place to rest what's too heavy to carry, a place to tell the truth, even when it hurts, a place where we stop being strong and finally feel safe. Gloria is 86. She prays every night in bed, not because she hopes to change anything, but because it's the only time she feels truly herself. She once said, "Prayer is where I remember who I was and who I still am." Repeat button. Let's remember what prayer gave us. Through every block of this journey, we've seen the quiet power of faith. When grief was too deep for words, prayer held the silence. When age made us feel forgotten, faith reminded us we're still seen. When fear of death crept in, belief gave us peace instead of panic. When we stopped doing and started simply being, God was already there. This isn't about having answers. It's about having somewhere to go when the questions feel too big. If you're over 60 and you've ever prayed with doubt, with weakness, with shaking hands, that prayer counted. It always counted. Because the older we get, the more we realize we don't need perfect faith. We just need a place to place our heart. And sometimes a whisper is enough. Subscribe to Speech Balloon Longevity Talks Herb for more honest, gentle, and powerful reflections on aging, strength, and the quiet moments that hold us together. And if this video spoke to you, even just one line, leave a comment with #StillPraying so we know you're with us. You're not alone. You never were.